rock star panelists that have agreed to come and share some of their experiences with us. We're going to do things a little bit differently today because the focus is on the discussion, and we're going to skip a whole lot of preliminaries. But I do want to welcome you and thank you for coming. My name is Vicki Morris. I am the host and program director of RISE, which is Regional Innovators Sustaining the Ecosystem, and we are phenomenally excited to have you here with us this morning. I hope you've had time to sign in, grab some pastries, grab some coffee. We've got a few ways to connect with RISE. Our website is up, and we've got our bios for all of our panelists on the website. The website is therisegroupHSB.com. And right at the top, you will see a link to click on the PDF to get all of the bios for our fabulous panelists here. All right, and now we do have a sponsor today, and we'll have a word from our sponsor.
I'm sure that does sound a little cheesy and old-fashioned.
Yes.
My sponsor. I'm Sherry Burnham. I'm with Investors Resource, Raymond James Financial. We're a comprehensive wealth management firm. I know several of you in the room, so good to see you guys. Thank you, panel. Today, you probably have seen on the website, I just wanted to make a quick announcement to you. It's a fabulous networking opportunity and community event. Mark your calendars for November 29th, Christmas in November. This is our annual fundraising campaign. It has traditionally been just the Investors Resource Raymond James clientele, and over the past few years has grown and grown and grown to be quite a community event. Last year, several of you attended. Lisa Williams last year was our speaker, and we try to find people that they've got a story. Because if you think about Christmas being the ultimate gift, and you're like, well, why would a wealth management firm be sponsoring a Christmas party, and how does all that how do you connect the dots with all that? Well, if you're looking at the season, and you're looking at, who am I? How do I recreate my life? What is it that I'm here to do? What gift is it that I am to leave? What is my legacy? All of those, we believe, are extremely critical wealth management questions. So we invite you to join us to build a better Huntsville on November 29. It's at the Jackson Center. It is an evening event, and we are hosting Lincoln Village Ministries. Those of you that know that community know that's a fabulous organization. The founder, Mark Stearns, will be our speaker. So if you'd like information on it, please see us at the end or consult the website. Ms. Vicki did help us with some of the marketing. Plug. And we thank you for letting us sponsor today.
All right, well, thank you very much. And we've got information about their party. I hope you'll be there. I will be there, and I'll be looking to see how many of you are there.
I've got a series of questions that I'm going to be asking our panelists. We have on the end 3 business owners, and sitting next to them are 3 subject matter experts, 1 legal, 1 accounting, and 1 human resource. So I've got a series of questions we're going to ask, and we're going to let the business owners chime in with sort of their personal experience and story. And then as needed, we're going to turn over to our subject matter experts, and they'll add a little more color to the discussion. So I'm going to kick this off with the first question, which is, what was your original vision for your business, and did it remain the same, or did it change? And if it changed, what was the cause? And Lynn, I'm going to put you on the spot to kick it off. So if you'll respond to that one.
So Troy 7 is an engineering services company. I am a local UAH graduate. I have an engineering degree, and I was a co-op student at Teledyne. And after I graduated, after 5.5 long years of getting that degree, I went to work for Teledyne full time, and I worked there almost 20 years. And I loved it. I loved what I did, but there were a lot of contractual changes in the industry. And my husband and I had gotten married in July. He was also a 20-year Teledyne veteran and also UAH alumni. So we had this vision of a small business that would be like Teledyne used to be. And I know that sounds kind of cliche, but it was a small group of people. We were a flight test group, and we loved what we did in flight testing, and we wanted to pull together some really smart people and be very niche-y and do one thing and do it really, really well and take really good care of those people that were the best at what they did in the industry. And for the most part, we have hung on to that. People often ask us, we have 50 employees and we've been at that level for a while. And they say, do you want to grow? Do you want to be the next Torch or the next Radiance or even Dynetics? And I'm like, no. I want to stay small. I don't want to be a butts and seats company. I want to know my employees. I want to take good care of them, and I want to do highly technical work. I don't want to branch out from that. So we turn 11 in November, and we have pretty much stayed true to that vision and not really changed it, and it's worked well for us. We've got some great relationships with primes. We generally are a subcontractor, and that works well for us as well because the primes count on us and come to us and depend on us to perform very niche responsibilities, and it's worked for us.
Great. Mark, do you want to maybe respond to that one as well?
So mine's a little bit different. I'm also a UAH graduate and from New Orleans, University of New Orleans before that. And when I finished, we built a small spacecraft. It's called a CubeSat at the university. My brother was the team lead. I served as the program manager. And we identified the need to develop, the reason was we didn't have enough money. So we ended up like hijacking for this spacecraft a garage door opener to talk to it. And that cost $7 or something. And went to space on an Air Force mission, which is kind of funny. But to replace that with a commercial unit was somebody sitting in a garage, hand building it and charging $10,000. And they weren't really high quality, they weren't really reliable. And so we identified with some Huntsville-based manufacturing and our design capability, which we already had as students building the spacecraft, to get into aerospace electronics. Our first product was a spacecraft radio, and we shipped 4 for the price of one competitor. It was easier to use and all the nice things. So now we're almost 5 years later, and we do a new, better than state-of-the-art data acquisition system supporting the aircraft flight tests, where we previously were trying to integrate components to spacecraft. There's not really any money, but now there's money there. There wasn't 5 years ago. There are a lot of airplanes that need measurements, and effectively anytime an airplane needs a measurement, it's already late and it's already the red line in the program schedule. And so we squished that from maybe like 8 weeks of getting your components ready, arriving, configuring them down to less than a week. And that means it's a value savings to the customer. They can ship more airplanes or whatever it is. Maybe make up some lost time. And we're a component supplier. So whereas I have no interest in being in the service company, I love products. But there's a really important relationship there because someone else is bolting on the equipment and it has to work. And it has to work for everyone involved. The user, the services, and us as the product OEM. So we've stayed in the same hole, just a different customer segment at the moment, and bridging back and forth between space and airplanes.
Just maybe a follow-on question to that. Was there any intellectual property involved with what you developed? You, Mark?
Me?
Yeah.
All IP.
Okay. So,
I'm an IP company.
Chris, you want to maybe comment a little bit about?
Sure. Did you get some patents on those, or?
No, right now trade secrets and hold them
Okay.
tight. But we are moving into the patent process for a few of the products moving forward.
Right. So I mean, I guess that's one as if you're starting up and you're an IP company, that's one decision you have to make is, do you want to go the trade secret route, which is where you don't publish all the technology and everything that you know about this invention that you have or whatever, and you hold it tight to the vest and hope that no one else finds out about it. And
garage door.
and protect it that way, or you can choose to go to the patent office, publish all your findings and all your research, and make that give that information out to the world. In exchange for that, you get a limited monopoly on it for a period of years, but that eventually runs out and everybody knows. So, but as a business owner, you got to make the decision of do you want to go, which route is going to be most beneficial for you in the long term.
Great, thanks. Okay, we're going to move on to the second question that I've got, which is what were the biggest obstacles you had to overcome to get started? And Larry, I'm going to put you on the spot to respond to that one.
Okay, well, I was a co-founder of Project XYZ. My wife, Kim, who's in the back of the room over there, was the original founder of Project XYZ. So I'll speak from 2 perspectives. One, when she got started, and 2, when we kind of morphed into government contracting. So when she was getting started, I think the biggest challenge that she had was being basically a company of one. And so being taken seriously as having a company. A lot of times when she was doing consulting, companies will either want her to be a 1099 employee or just an employee of theirs as opposed to running work through Project XYZ. So we had to fight that quite a bit. The way we overcame it, basically, we just had to make the investments in the company. So, you know, any deterrent that they would put up, like, well, we would love to run business, you know, through your company, but you've got to have, you know, this type of insurance, and that insurance costs X. So we would just go get the insurance and say, okay, we've got it, so go ahead and do it. And so that was for that side. When I moved over in 2007, we have morphed into, you know, she was doing healthcare IT, I was doing government contracting for another company, so we started doing government contracting at Project XYZ, and the biggest challenge then was, for me personally, was I was a vice president of strategic planning and IT. Company had grown from 85 people to 700 people, very successful, sold, had a very, you know, successful CEO to go on to Project XYZ. So all the relationships I had built were great and wonderful over the years, but it's like, well, that was you over there. What are you doing in Project XYZ? So trying to be able to convince people that we could do the same things, maybe even better than what we had done, what I had done, and other people had done in the past, was a big challenge. And the way we kind of overcame that is we were fortunate enough to be able to make investments into our company. So Kim has probably told this story before. One of the first things that we did to prove that we had some past performance is that we built basically a communication network center in one of the spare bedrooms of our house to sell internet service to the neighborhood in Limestone County that had no internet service. So we have this 45-foot flag antenna in our backyard that we use to fly this. And that became and we had another company that kind of sold the service for us. So people in our neighbors would come by and they'd say, well, you know, why you got that flag antenna? You're like, oh, this company came and they said they paid us to do that. So no one ever really knew it was us to begin with, but that became a way for us when we went out and market and started telling our story. We always ended with that as part of our past performance because people remember that. And so slowly over time and investment, people started kind of accepting us as Project XYZ. So.
Very good. Thank you for that response. And Mark, put you on the spot for that same question.
Which is the obstacles?
Biggest obstacles that you have.
So I came out of a student lab and I worked in NASA as an intern for 2.5 years during my graduate research, and as well as the student team that were building spacecraft at the university. And when we transitioned over, obviously there was a weird mix. We had contractors that were experienced heritage. We started out with actual legal, actual accounting firms to run the company because we had the intention of selling expensive things to expensive companies. So we had the right infrastructure. We had a similar issue. You know, we're not, usually a startup doesn't have any infrastructure traditionally. But by, I don't know, week number 8 or something, we had everything you can imagine legal-wise in place. And I think our first sale was a spacecraft component to Romania, which is kind of fun. Anyway, the guy was angry at some Australians, so he bought our product instead of theirs. And, it was good. I met him like 5 times since then at different trade conferences. But how do you get taken seriously? We're not a services company. There is, if you remember 5 years ago in Huntsville, there wasn't so much of an ecosystem for innovation yet. It's gotten a lot stronger, maybe tripled, quadrupled in strength in the last few years. So it was very much crafting, it felt like a lot of trailblazing. It felt like a tremendous amount of trailblazing. The good thing is we knew about this market. Not many people play in this market on a global scale, but we knew it was growing. It was at the point where satellites were going from 50 per year to 500 per year, and was very quickly escalating because of the cost of components going down, and we were part of that story. Then we had to go to a bank and be like, all right, we're running a bank. Or we need a bank. We need a bank to do legitimate banking services because we have this money like coming in from Romania, and they're like, but you don't have a business plan, and you don't know that the market's going to be stable, so this doesn't work. And it took about 2.5 years before we got past basic like lines of credit, so you can buy from suppliers and sell to customers. And there's a big gap there in the first few years, especially when you're in a market segment that's not well defined. I think other cities wouldn't have that problem, but we're in Huntsville. And we're in Alabama. It's not really Huntsville, it's really Alabama that writes the law on that. So it's a risk-adverse community, and so it's very hard to find, especially traditional resources like banking, that are not risk-adverse.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the third question. What mentors did you use for guidance and help along the way? Larry, I'm going to ask you to respond to that.
Mentors. So, we were fortunate enough to have people around us. My former boss, John Stallworth, he was a mentor to us when we were getting started. Bobby Bradley, who was sold her business at CST and sold to SAIC. She mentored Kim a lot. And then from my being CEO of BizTech, and when seeing different startups come in, the one thing that we tell them is, find you a good mentoring team. And the thing that I like about the people that we have around us is, you always think that your idea is great, the plan that you want to go down is perfect, but you want to have somebody that's going to challenge you on your thoughts, and you still may end up doing it anyway, but having that counterbalance to your optimism is good, because it kind of helps you mitigate the risk of things that you may decide to do, and gives you something else to think about.
Very good. Lynn, would you like to add anything to that one?
I think for me, I was very blessed to have been in a program at Teledyne that was the Female and Minority Management Program. They felt like they had a lot of white guys running Teledyne, and they needed to shift their reputation and promote more females and minorities. And there were a group of women there that shepherded that group along, and it was actually a 3-year program that really gave me a lot of confidence in being able to step out in an engineering world with a bunch of men and do this. But there were also men there that encouraged me, and one of my favorite mentors is Clyde Jones. He was one of my professors at UAH, and he believed in me and encouraged me, and I might have quit engineering school if it hadn't been for him. So I've had male and female mentors that helped encourage me along the way, and it's been a blessing.
Great.
I got a little something to add.
Sure,
please.
please.
When I saw this question, just from the legal perspective, you can have people that are mentors, but you can also have companies that are mentors. A lot of companies in town do business with the federal government. Obviously, we're a big government contracting town. There are programs with the federal government that set aside business for small disadvantaged businesses, and only those businesses are eligible to compete for those. Sometimes those are very good contracts, and there are very big companies that would like to get a piece of the action. And the Small Business Administration has a program called Mentor Protege program, where you can team up. A very small business can prime and team up with a very large business to go after contracts that are set aside for small businesses, and that's a very beneficial program that's incubated a lot of companies in town. So you can have people that are mentors too, but you can also look to gain expertise and guidance and kind of help get propped up in the market by some of the other companies and resources that we have available in town.
Yeah, we actually participated in that program. Tech Masters, Dr. Marvin Carroll in Tech Masters, they were our mentor through the Missile Defense Agency Mentor Protege program, and we were able to take advantage of the mentor received funding to help mentor us. And I think when we started in the program, we were maybe 10 people, and we kind of grew about 25 doing that process, and a lot of that growth came from the Mentor Protege program.
Very good. We're going to move on to the next question. How important is your leadership team, and how did you build the team? And Lynn, I'm going to ask you to start on that one.
So along the line of what I mentioned earlier of keeping it small, we have a very small leadership team at Troy 7. My husband and I started the company, and we're the only 2 owners still. But after we'd been in the business, and we had been running the company for a while, and I realized I'm not an accountant, and doing all this accounting and is hard. I need some financial assistance. And I hired a CFO, and She has changed my world. The freedom I feel of having a CFO that is so competent is amazing. I highly recommend it to anybody that thinks they're good at math because they're an engineer. Don't think you're an accountant too. You're not. And about 4 years ago, we hired a new company president. I needed a little refilling of my cup. I was pretty exhausted. It's a haul to own your own company and have a lot of people count on you 24/7. And we hired Patty Gargolinski. She was a former SES at MDA. This is what fills me up, working with the chamber with Kim and working on nonprofit boards. And it has opened me up to where I'm a better leader for my team. So I really take seriously the need to delegate and to have a close-knit group of leaders in your company you can trust. And I demand that everybody has an open door policy on my leadership team. Nobody's door is closed. If somebody has an accounting question or a contracts question or wants to just come in and talk about a problem they may be having with a customer or in their personal life, there's 4 of us there that are there for them. And it's wonderful because I have gone on 2 vacations in the last 2 years without my laptop. And that was a huge step for me.
Mike, maybe you can chime in a little bit about sort of what does it take to put a good leadership team together?
Well, there's a synergy that a leadership team provides an organization. And, they come from different disciplines within your organization. But the one thing that I have found to be successful is that each leader or each department needs to align their goals with the mission and vision of the organization. I think that's where a lot of leaders forget. They just think I'm part of the team, and they forget what the ultimate goal of the organization is. And so as you develop your leadership team, you want to find the right skill set that weighs against and complements the strengths that you have within your leadership team, but never forget where you are and where you want to go. And that's to align every department to be aligned with the mission and vision of your organization. There are skills assessments that you can do when you're recruiting leadership into your organization, DISC training, stuff like that, to help you find out people's weaks and strengths. But at the same time, you want to be able to make sure that they're aligned. That alignment is so key as you move forward.
And Sharon, I'm going to ask you to chime in on one other thing that plays off of what Lynn talked about. Not every company can afford to go hire a CFO based on their size as they're growing. You want to talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls that you've run across with some of the clients you've worked with?
Some of the pitfalls that we've run across is we work with small and medium-sized companies, and so many people try, when they start their business, to do everything themselves. And it's just impossible. It's hard to cover all the bases. You become exhausted, and then you become inefficient at everything you do. So we try to start with people when they're small and get them started on the right track with the proper accounting system, filing their taxes properly, and getting everything in place so that they don't end up upside down.
We're going to move on to the next question, which is how did you gain market awareness or presence, and what were the major hurdles in developing meaningful sales? And Larry, I'm going to ask you to comment.
Well, gaining market awareness, going back when we were in healthcare IT, Kim came from a healthcare IT background. She met a lot of different consultants and consulting firms, and so it was, I won't say it was easy, but the market knowledge was an advantage for her when we started on that side. Same for me. I had been doing government contracting for, I guess, 10, 12 years at that point, so knew a lot of customers, knew a lot of just people in general. And it's interesting from a husband and wife dynamic. Healthcare IT, commercial, government contracting, kind of 2 different things. And when I came over, we had the conversation about, well, how are we going to grow the business? And I said, well, how many hospitals doors do we have to knock on to get a $500,000 contract? And I said, I can just maybe go down to Fort Gordon and get a contract, and it might be a $500,000 like that. And then sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And I had no idea about that, but Fort Gordon was in my business area when I was at Madison Research, and just happened to go down, and we ended up with a $500,000 contract that grew into something bigger over time. So, so within the areas that we knew, it was, again, I won't say it was easy, but we had a good start. Trying to migrate from that, from IT and commercial IT and I guess military IT into other fields, it was just a little different because, again, people want to know, what do you know? What do they identify you as? So they identified us as an IT company. And again, you'll hear a theme for Project XYZ is that we make investments into things to kind of prove that we can do things. So the biggest, the most strategic and biggest investment we ever made was buying this warehouse facility, logistics facility out in El Paso, Texas, that happened to be the depot for legacy Hawk and Chaparral missile systems. We knew that it was important to the Army. The place was about to go into bankruptcy. No one expected a little 8A company to buy it. We bought it. It proves to the government that I guess they do know what they're talking about. And so from that point, we were able to go from owning the building to getting the contract to manage the building, and then we took over all of the operations of that facility, both there, and it kind of just became the basis. So we went from being an IT company in 2007, basically, to being an engineering foreign military sales company in 2018. And so it's just, understanding where the money is, where the customer is going, and then doing the things that you have to do to build credibility into that area.
Mark, like to add a little something to that?
Sure, I have to remind myself what the question was, because my mind goes everywhere. So we're in an interesting transition in my company on this. So we're really good at inventing products, and one of the later questions is advice. So my advice to new startups that I run into, or people starting businesses, is to find people that want to spend money and make sure you solve their problem. Stop making your own problems. We've made our own problems, and a lot of them are really shiny and pretty, and they work, and that's great, and no one cares. And that's expensive. It's a lot of high R&D, which is a little overwhelming. And so we're trying to, I think our first venue into products we weren't expecting was when we transitioned from the spacecraft to airplanes. And it was some retired Army test pilots that had run their own commercial firm back in 2014 at a house party, and they thought that we were the whiz kids. So we brought an empty black tactical Pelican case to a meeting, and they thought we were important because we had a black tactical looking box with us. It was completely empty. We walked out of there with a $20,000 contract. It was pretty hilarious. That actually just sparked a whole new product series that has become our #1 product. Now we're trying to work with global level companies to bring them these new measuring electronics. Now we have to pivot. So we have to pivot not with the product itself, but stop looking for one-off aircraft, because one airplane at a time doesn't make enough money to run a business. And so with fleets of aircraft or fleets of whatever means volume. And in a product sales side, 10 people could run 10,000 smart systems. Think of the light bulbs in the room. I think of the university, right? We joined the chamber to be part of the trade shows in Paris and Farnborough in London, which are the largest and second largest aerospace deal making. That's where the deals get signed. I think on the order of like 200 billion, something like that. It's a tremendous amount of money. Anyway, we're in Farnborough 2 years ago, and we were trying to work on a space station project, moving the data acquisition onto the space station. And I was meeting with a radiation tolerant component provider out of Austria, and they're on every single aircraft you can think of. They make the little tiny chip that is on the circuit board that switches the data between all the components. They're like the world specialist in that. And I'm standing there, and I didn't know it, but sitting right next to me was the guy that ran the biggest world leader in the same stuff we do. And then the F-35 was making its first flights, and we all go outside to look at the airplane. He's like, "Well, what do you do?" And I'm like, "Well, I make data acquisition." He's like, wait, are you my competition? And I'm like, no, I mean, we're one handshake from a partnership of some sort, I'm sure. I would love to be your next generation product. And now we're 2 years later, and we just found out that we've been bidding directly against them on multiple aircraft programs for fleets, and hope maybe we become an acquisition target. Who knows? And so we're trying to figure out, should we start selling IP? Should we keep trying to sell the actual hardware products? And it's strange because there's not exactly a business model that we're directly seeing. We're not under supervision of like a mentor that's done this before. I guess normally this is a Silicon Valley kind of deal where you're inventing IP and then moving it out. And so Huntsville has the capability of doing it. There's just a lot of bridges to build sometimes. It feels like it at least.
All right, very good. We're going to move on to the next question. Did you need to raise capital? And if so, where did you go to get your funding? And Lynn, I'm going to ask you to talk about that one.
7, we had saved some money. My husband and I quit on the same day and walked away from our 20-year careers, and walked away from our benefits and our retirements and everything. And it was terrifying in that respect, for my mom at least. She was like, what are you doing? And we had a number in mind, and then my husband's brother, Ed, so we did the friends and family approach, loaned us $26,000. And we said, okay, between what we have and what Ed gave us, we haven't made a go of this. One of us is going to go get another job. So that was what we did, and I'm proud to say we paid Ed back. He was our first priority, paying him back when we first started making money. And we never have had debt. Choice 7 has a services business, as Mark noted, is a completely different model. You don't have a lot of investment in equipment. But my husband and I are also partners in a local craft brewery, Rocket Republic Brewing, plug. And that was a totally different beast. There is a lot of expensive equipment involved in microbrewing. People don't realize the cost of those kettles and fermenters and glycol chillers and grain cutters and coolers and kegs to store the beer in after you make it. It is an incredibly expensive infrastructure business. And we made an initial capital investment in that out of our own savings. And we reached a limit of comfort and said, let's go to a bank now. So, we do have a current loan. We bank that at one of the local banks here that's been very good to us. We have very good luck with the banking. I was intrigued to hear you say that, because we get pursued by banks. We don't have that same issue, but we still have debt with Rocket Republic. That equipment is still not paid for. So when you build stuff and you have product that you move that requires infrastructure, it is a different financial model, and it's totally different than our experience with Choice 7. We hope to be debt-free at Rocket Republic in about 2.5 years, and then we will own everything you see when you walk into our brewery, which will be like, oh, we made it. It's different for manufacturing than services, I would say, the capital problem.
Very good. Larry, would you like to comment on that one?
Yeah, so I guess it's not for lack of trying to raise capital, but we just never really raised any capital. So we just made sacrifices when Kim was starting Project XYZ. Well, actually, we weren't married at the time, but we were engaged. And after we got married, she continued doing that. I continued working at Madison Research, so that kind of helped things out a lot. And then when Madison sold, I had just a very, 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 very tiny piece of interest in Madison. So that kind of helped us, when I branched out and came over. And then for a number of years, a lot of years, I didn't draw a salary out of the business. So we could put money back into the company to grow, back to the bank. So, we are quasi services and product kind of. So then you heard about investments that we've made. So we established a very good relationship with the bank. First Commercial Synovus Bank has been with us from the almost the very beginning. And it's interesting because when banks are very risk adverse, and you have to work with them. But once it's all about relationships. So once you develop a relationship with a good bank and they begin to trust you and you can trust them with different things, then magically things happen. Because I'll say this, and it's a plug for Synovus, there's very few community banks that would lend money for a warehouse that they had never seen in El Paso, Texas. But they trusted us enough to do that for us because they understood the importance for the business. And so we use debt a lot. I grew up, well, I went to MBA school, at a time at the peak of, leverage buyouts. And so, you guys remember Wall Street, greed is good. So in business school, MBA school, debt is your friend. So, so we understand how to use leverage a little bit to kind of grow the business, but not getting too much. And then someone had told me, a mentor way back when, for another business venture I had when I was fresh out of college, they were saying equity is going to be the most expensive money that you will ever take when you sell equity in your company, because someone gives you $100,000 today. It's great, it's wonderful, it gets your idea. Now your business is 20, and they got maybe 20% of your company, and that's all they did. And now your business is $20 million. You're giving 20% for them for $100,000. So don't be afraid to use debt. Work with your banks to get your lines of credit and things that you need to grow.
Great.
Louis Machete, raise your hand.
And Synovus Bank's Rocky Republic as well.
There you go.
I know, I've worked with some of Lewis's startup clients. He does a great job and takes care of them. Great guy, great bank.
So they're all three of us are.
The bank's Rocky Republic as well.
I think I'd been to like probably 6 other banks, and then I'd never felt actual mentorship through the banking process. And then we worked with Dave Kemery and Beth is friend. Beth leads the Huntsville or North Alabama sector, and she knew some friends of friends that said y'all should go work with them. And then I was told through Alabama, Synovus down in Georgia has probably the strongest SBA program, especially for the exported products. There's a very specific SBA program for exported products. And none of the banks except for Synovus and Huntsville had that capability. And anyway, that's what triggered it, and it ended up being a much stronger relationship than other banks we'd ever touched.
Great. So we're going to move on to the next question, which is what community resources did you use to start or grow your business? And again, Lynn, I'm going to ask you to respond to that one.
For that one, I would say I laughed when Larry said that one of the things he needed was insurance. When we got our first contract, they said, we need a copy of your COI. And I was like, Googling, what's a COI? I was like, I don't even know what that is. It was a certificate of insurance. And I was like, what kind of insurance do I have to have? And they said, well, here's the minimum requirements on page 12 of the FAR. We're going to flow these down to you. And I was like, oh, God, what have I got into? But there are so many good people in this town that will help you. If you have the urge to start a small business, there are HR groups, there are accountants, there are insurance providers, and I have used them all. And there are people like BizTech that will lead you down the path. The Women's Economic Development Center is another great resource locally. And I did rely on other companies. ITT was our first prime, and Jimmy Allen worked there, and Jimmy kind of introduced me to a lot of the people that could help me get started. Service First was Troy Sevens Bank, and Rockt Republic, like I said, is with Synovus, but the banks were a critical partner to us, and this town supports entrepreneurism, and there is a lot of resources out there, but I encourage you to the Women's Economic Development Center, and they help not just women entrepreneurs, and BizTech has some great incubators for the young folks and opportunities to learn there. But the biggest thing to me is getting that list of suppliers for HR, accounting, and all the things you don't do, and outsource it early.
Couldn't agree more with that. Larry, comment on that one?
Yeah, very similar. I mean, we, obviously we talked about our banking relationship, and then, having a good team, good legal team, that was very crucial to us in the beginning. Good CPA firm. We went through 2. We had a very good relationship with our first one, and then things happened, so we decided to move to another firm. Again, Project XYZ, we're not your traditional government contractor, so we have a very complicated business structure. I guess is the easiest way to say it. And so having the right accountants and lawyers and bankers around us has helped made our growth easy. I think the interesting thing, going back to the ecosystem, when we knew that when Kim had started, we knew we were selling management research. We actually went to BizTech for support, and they were basically told, we don't really work with government contractors. And then we went back to raise some capital from the Huntsville Angel Group, and it was kind of like, man, government contractors, you got plenty of resources. So it's just kind of interesting that over the year, we ended up buying the BizTech building out of government contracting dollars, and and then so now government contractor dollars save BizTech. But when we took over BizTech, we wanted to make sure that we were open for all types of businesses. Number one, government contractors, whatever you wanted to do, high growth, high tech, starting a flower shop, whatever it is, we'll talk to you. The other thing that we wanted to do for the community is to start talking with the other resources. We talked about earlier, 5-6 years ago, people didn't talk to each other. Everything was stovepipe. So, through this thing that we created called Innovate Huntsville, it brings the ecosystem together under that banner, and we talk to each other. We know what our strengths and weaknesses are, and amongst ourselves as organizations, and that gives back to help entrepreneurs and startups. So I feel like, reaching out to any organization that's part of Innovate Huntsville is a strength of this community now. So, which is much different than when a lot of us started our businesses. Also, like Lynn said, in our industry, the other government contractors have been very helpful. Torch, Bill Rourke at Torch Technologies, Hal Brewer and Ray Almodovar at Intuitive were great mentors and partners for us when we were getting started. And they were just, at the time, it's kind of funny to look back on it, they were just a little bit ahead of us. I remember sitting down talking to Bill. He probably had maybe 40 employees at the time. And, hey, whatever you can do, if you need our HR, if you need this, you need that, just call us. And, and so to watch them grow and then to, help us with subcontracts and things has just been kind of great. And I think that's another strength of ours.
So I'm going to hit the next question, which is, what would the younger you wish you had known before you started your business? And Lynn, I'm going to let you start with that one.
I didn't think that one was mine. The younger me, I'm learning every day, I think, and I think that's one of the things that I always want to do is learn, and I'm learning from Larry here. It's interesting, his debt comment. I grew up very, very poor and I hate debt, and I do not ever use leverage. I want to be debt-free forever. So I'm going to try to learn some more today. I think my younger me, probably what I needed more than anything was more confidence. I think I did not have a lot of confidence. And I will say my husband was a huge boost to my confidence. He would tell me things like, you can do this. You just don't realize that you have the capacity, and people will listen to you, and people like working for you at Teledyne, and they will like working for you in your own business. And I lacked a lot of confidence in myself to do it. And he pushed me out and said, we can do this, and you're going to be the CEO, and you're going to see that you can build your own company. And I wish my younger me had just not been so lacked so much confidence.
Mark?
Let's say I knew that a few of my critical mentors told me I should go get a real job first. But I don't regret starting the company without getting a real job. Actually, I was trying to work for MO&I contracts, Teledyne. I was actually trying to get on swords at Teledyne. Anyway, I tried to join the Teledyne team. I liked them. They took care of us as students. But I started the business too fast. So then they ended up contracting us back. We had, I think one of the things, I recently, John was telling me about an invention of his recently. And he did something very interesting, and it's something that I think me 5 years ago never thought about doing. It's to take what I thought was an answer and to drop it in front of another person that may or may not be a stakeholder and ask them what they thought. If we would have done that 5 years ago, we would know way more about where money is, which is important to make money, where money's moving, and where there's extra of it, or where someone's losing money and they want to stop losing money, and you can fix that problem as well. And only by kind of dropping the solution even if it's a concept on the table, can you really detect that with honesty from a stakeholder that has cash? Separately, once you validate there's a customer, then you can go do all the rest of it, like build the pretty shiny object. We usually just build the shiny object and then we hope there was a customer. Terrible way to do it. And so that's probably the biggest roadblock. It doesn't take long, by the way, to find someone that owns a problem. Problem owners, usually when they hear you have an answer, will creep out of the woodwork to find you. It's just sometimes it's easy in Huntsville. I guess the first place we started, we really put our business, it was a couple months after we started, we hired employees and bought equipment, had to get insurance for all the equipment, so if we burn the building down, someone pays for that. We promised not to stab each other with soldering irons, but they still made us get coverage for my twin and I not to stab each other with soldering irons. That was literally a conversation on moving in to the building. That's how I learned what insurance was. You need to go to get some insurance. But it was a secured facility, so there's not a lot of transactions in a secured facility. We scouted out BizTech early on. It didn't work for us. That's fine. Recently, we decided to really help champion the UAH Innovation Center. That, I think, is going to be a pivotal spot in our economy. It's though called this in every way. They call it an incubator. Definitely not an incubator, but it is going to be, I think, a hub of the ecosystem of how businesses work together, large and small working together instead of small starving. Small businesses starving, it shouldn't be what our community is known for. We usually just have subject matter expert companies, but companies that kind of spin up the way we did would traditionally flop on their face. And there's a lot of fighting uphill to get where we're at. We still haven't made it out of the woods, but we're far enough into the hole, we might as well finish it. But definitely dropping solutions on the table and seeing who in the community needs this answer, or someone else in the world, is something I wish I would have known, and wish I would have put into practice a lot earlier. We made that pivot about a year ago of actually doing that, and it helps out in every way.
Great. Mike, you had something you wanted to add to that one?
Yeah, I just want to respond to the, since we can't go back in time and, say, I wish I could do something different, we can learn from the younger generations, a different slant on this answer. We talk about millennials, and I know probably most of us are going to roll our eyes when we think about them. But they will be running our companies in the future, and I'll just tell you a quick story. A couple of years ago when I was here at Hudson Alpha as the director of HR, I went to a seminar and I took my HR journalist with me, and it was on generations at work. And the people that led it were about age 50, and everybody in attendance was probably 40 years of age and older. So when we started talking about generations, it was more complaining. And the only young person in the room was my HR journalist, and she was about 28. And she finally just said to about 50 people in the room, well, instead of looking, commenting, and thinking about the things we cannot do, think about the things we can do. And sort of a light bulb went on. I'm thinking, I don't have to go tell this employee that works for me to do A, B, C, D, and E. All I need to tell her is, these are the resources, this is what I want, and allow her to go do it, and she would do it. I didn't have to worry about the process. The end result was what I was looking for. And so, a different take on what we can learn, and I just don't want us to forget that we can learn from those that are not like us. So, we need to embrace the younger generation. That's just a word of advice to you.
So we're going to move on to the last question, which will be, if someone asked you about starting a business, what advice would you give them? And I'm going to go right down the line. Everybody, maybe take about 30 seconds and hit it. So Lynn, I'll let you start.
And I think completing my thought from before is don't be afraid. Don't let fear dictate what you do. If you have a passion for something and you want to start a business, I think get out there and try. And like I said, there's a lot of resources in town that can help you. Because I think the worst thing to do would be when it comes time to retire, you look back and have a lot of regrets for what you didn't try to do. So I think approach it without fear. And it was a lot less scary starting Rocket Republic than after having gone through the process. So it is truthful that you can overcome the fear and do what you're dreaming of doing.
Larry?
Yeah, I think that's kind of mine too. I mean, I think I've had a lot of ideas about business over time, and a lot of times I didn't treat those ideas like businesses. So even if you're working a job, even if you're scared of taking the first step, go through the process of creating a business. You know, go downtown and register an LLC and, you know, sell something. You know, whatever it takes just to get the practice and get the knowledge going, because maybe that's not the business that you ultimately end up to, but going through the process helps you get better and understand. The more you do it, the better you get over time. And so I would just encourage everyone to, if you've got any type of entrepreneurial dream, just go and do it. So.
My first company it made negative $50, which is a great loss. We're going to lose a $50 license fee is the best thing to lose, and then move on.
Right.
And then hire real people. Aside from finding customers that that have problems and money, which I think is easy, there's another one, and that's how to build partnerships, whether they're suppliers or key personnel, contract, whatever, customer. There's an important time to transact an agreement that vests that person in the opportunity, whether it's an equity holder in the invention or whether it's a partner that's going to do some critical aspect of the business activity, like a salesperson or something. And I think that it's easy to do that prematurely before people have actually played their cards and figured out the path of least resistance to deliver the product to the customer. And so I guess one piece that I would share is to me, you shouldn't hesitate from binding with somebody to do business, but at the same time, if it doesn't feel right, there's literally no penalty for saying, when it's the right time, we'll know it. Like, we'll see why we're going to do business together. A lot of people I run into in the hallways at our office, there's about 10 businesses co-located now at the universities at our test site here for this innovation center. And it's like, I don't know why we're going to work together later. But I'm not worried about going get a position right now with your company where I own something of your company or I have some contract with you. I'm not worried about that. But I may need something and we'll work something smaller and then we'll get bigger, and then if you have a problem, I'll make your problem go away. And we'll figure it out when it's the right time.
Chris?
That's absolutely great advice. You know, some of the messiest, I do a lot of handling of business disputes, obviously, and some of the messiest disputes are the ones that, you know, arise between people that got into business together very early on, you know, without clear understandings or understandings that didn't come out, play out in the end. And, you know, the business goes on to be very successful and suddenly there's a fight and, you know, you get out of that honeymoon period and you're in something messy. So definitely choosing the right people at the very beginnings of your relationship and your businesses, and making sure that you've got clear understandings with those people and what you're going to be doing and what your obligations are is very important. I'd also kind of add from like this part of the road down, you know, we are kind of the support services provider, and understand that with, you know, startup businesses, a lot of times, you know, just we are an expense, and a lot of times when you're starting a business, you're dealing with scarce funds, scarce resources. You're often, you know, shifting quickly, and you know, we recognize that. One frustration that I have as a lawyer a lot of times is people are kind of unwilling to pick up the phone and call their lawyer because they're afraid of getting a big legal bill. You know, they're afraid of the running fee. Everybody knows. It's just, but that is changing.
Statistically proven.
Right. That model is changing within, I think, the legal profession. You know, we're starting to offer, a lot of firms are offering, you know, kind of alternative payment structures where, you know, Lockheed has a building probably with hundreds of lawyers in it that handles all their legal needs. Smaller companies may hire someone full-time to do that, or hire a full-time HR person or a full-time accountant. When you get down smaller, a lot of times you have to look outside for people to fill those needs. And, you know, we try to look at the client that we're working with and try to be a value add rather than an expense. You know, when I work with a smaller client, what I want to show them is that we are adding value to your company and we're not just basically being a legion, you know, dragging you down and being another expense. So I think that's probably true for all of us in terms of the services that we try to offer.
Sharon?
My first advice is if when you're getting ready to start a business, find someone that's already successful in what you're wanting to do and talk to that person. Don't try to just start out reinventing the wheel. Find out what they beat their head against and try not to go there. You can learn a lot from talking with someone. And of course, please find an accountant, find an attorney, talk to someone in HR before you hire employees. We see so many people that started out in the wrong direction and it could have been solved. And an accountant and an attorney and your employees, that is so important. And like Chris said, it used to be, you used to think of accountants and attorneys, it's gonna cost me a fortune and the meter's running. And in the accounting industry also, we work from a package point of view instead of just by the hour. And that has changed this industry to where everybody should be able to afford it. And if you're just starting out, I'd rather work with you and get you started so you'll be successful. So we'll work with whoever that needs our services.
My advice is if you have a vision to provide a service product component, do it. Don't be afraid. I know it's that leap. You're moving from security to unsecurity, but the potential is definitely there. And like it's been said, learn from people. Surround yourself with mentors that have done what you are, that maybe are a few years in front of you, so you can ask for their advice. I know I do that. Another thing I would just say, hire people that are smarter than you to help you accomplish what you're going to do. From our perspective, this side of the panel, we do provide a service, and from an HR perspective, people are your most expensive asset, and they can also allow you to pull out the checkbook if you don't treat them right, or if you violate a law. So it's very, very important to focus on your people, maintain a positive relationship with them, build a culture that fosters engagement and team building, and you're here to help with HR issues, from talent management to compliance to audits, things of that nature. But if you have a vision, do it. That's all I would say.
Right. All right. And I'm going to add one last thing to that. Say it out loud. In other words, you have some great ideas when you're staring at the ceiling at 3 in the morning, but have somebody that you can talk to that can give you some meaningful feedback, and put your defenses down and listen to it. When questions are asked, answer them honestly. If they ask you something that you hadn't thought about, there's a reason you were asked that question, so go think about it. Because in the end, if you want to be successful, you're going to have to put a lot at risk to make it work. And the idea of being being the owner of a business, it always sounds great, but ask any of the people up here, they'll tell you it's a slog every day. And just because you were successful last week, last month, last year, doesn't mean you'll be successful tomorrow. So it is a slog. All right, I want to thank our panelists. Round of applause.